I think that's one of the greatest journeys of our lives, is to really learn how to kind of quiet that voice of I'm not good enough or I can't do this.
Hello, and welcome back to Seek the Joy podcast. Happy Seek the Joy Tuesday. I'm your host, Sydney Weiss, and on the podcast this week is Melina Charis. She's an alignment coach, creative entrepreneur, and writer. And Melina and I first connected last year when she reached out to me on Instagram. She slid into my DMs, and so we met up for coffee and realized right away just how much we have in common and how similar our journeys and our experiences had been. And at the time, she had just launched her blog, Well Wild World, and today it's called something totally different. And so it's been so fun to watch Melina grow and evolve over the last year and really watch her step into becoming who she knows she is. And so Melina has been in the midst of this incredible transition. And in this week's new episode, we chat about Melina's journey quitting her 9-to-5 in higher education to becoming an alignment coach and creative entrepreneur. We talk about learning to quiet the inner critic and pushing past that voice that says you're not enough, and how really launching her blog in 2018 opened Melina up to writing again, the connections, creativity, and joy it brought her, and being creative for the sake of being creative. Melina opens up about her journey with anxiety, mental health, and wellness, the role that self-awareness has played in all of it, and the tools and practices that she's relied on throughout life's transitions. Plus, Melina shares with us her go-to mantra, the impact that embracing her human design as a projector has had on her life and her business, her biggest dream, and so much more. It is always so much fun for me to share with you guys the people that I have connected with since starting this podcasting journey, and sharing with you the people who have become friends in my life is even more special. And so I can't wait to hear what you guys think about this one. Make sure to join the conversation on our social media channels. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere. Hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or really wherever it is that you are tuning into the show right now. And I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Ratings and reviews really help independent shows like this one get seen and heard by new people, and I am honestly so grateful for every single piece of feedback and just the joy that this show has brought you. So when you leave us that rating and review, make sure to take a screenshot of your review and send it to Sydney at seekthejoypodcast.com. I'll send you some goodies to say thank you, and it's a really great way for us to connect outside of the show too. All right, guys, I am so excited to jump into this one. I loved having this conversation with Melina for Seek the Joy, and I'm just so grateful for everything that she shared. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Melina Charis.
So I'm Melina Charis. I am a coach. I'm calling myself now an alignment coach.
Yes.
I just adopted that, which I love. I actually was talking to a friend the other day, and she was like, "Are you an alignment coach?" And I was like, "Yes."
I love it.
Yeah, because that's really my whole thing is I want to help women kind of two different ways, but they're very related. So the first way is for women who really aren't sure what their big dreams and goals are. They might feel like they've hit a lot of traditional markers of success, but they're still unfulfilled. They might feel unhappy in their current job, but they really don't know where they want to go next. Mm-hmm. They might feel stuck. I help those women to kind of figure out, like, what are your big dreams and goals, and who are you really? Because I think it all starts with that. So for everybody I work with, it's really, who are you? Who is your most authentic self? And then how can we kind of get your life so that you are living your most aligned and empowered life? But then I also help women who they're like, I know I've been wanting to do this big thing. I've been wanting to start a podcast. I've been wanting to become a yoga teacher or start a blog, but they just aren't doing it.
Yeah.
There's just like a lot of fear, a lot of self-doubt, comparison, or they just have struggled with anxiety. I help a lot of women that struggle with anxiety and have struggled with depression. I have struggled with anxiety myself and depression as well. And that can really, I mean, that can just totally derail you. And especially the fear just can keep you really stuck.
I love that we started by talking about alignment because I think that's such a huge word. And I think that for so many people, it's either intimidating or it feels too woo-woo. And I think the truth of what alignment really is, it's about knowing who you are and then being able to step forward confidently and fully knowing who you are very strongly and living in that sort of sense of purpose and understanding and groundedness and rootedness. And I love what you shared that you help women who either may not know who that woman is yet, or they haven't been willing or ready or able to step into that courage to really take that leap. And you had to really go through this journey yourself of getting to know who is Melina? Who is she? I'd love for you to share a little bit about what that journey has been like, because we have to get to know ourselves first, I think, obviously, right? Before we can help anyone else do the same.
Absolutely. And because I've been able to do this, that's why I'm so passionate about helping women do it, because it's just night and day difference. I know you've had your journey with this as well. And what can happen to us when we're not in alignment and when we don't know who we are is we get sick. We have a lot of physical issues. We struggle with really bad anxiety. So for me, it was anxiety. I have always been more of a worrier and very type A and very perfectionist. And that carried me really well through school, but there was always something underneath that. It was just a drive for perfectionism, and it was a need for so much validation from authority figures and teachers and even classmates that I was smart and that I knew what I was doing. And I was like constantly hustling to prove that I was good enough all the time. And so on the outside, I looked really successful, and especially we all know school really rewards that behavior because you're getting A's and you're doing well and everyone thinks you're fine. But then on the inside, I was really struggling. So I don't think I've shared this anywhere before, but my first panic attack I ever had was in my senior year of high school. And it was a terrifying experience. I did not even realize until literally recently that it was a panic attack. And it was like my senior year, and I was also constantly like filling my schedule to keep busy. I know no one can relate to that, right?
It's like you're keeping yourself busy to almost avoid, right? Like what's really going on. Yeah,
because you're not stopping. You're never stopping. I was literally in like 5 extracurricular activities. I was in 5 AP classes. I was directing plays. and it was all like really fun, but it was way too much for like anybody to be doing. And I was really stressed out. And so there was one night in senior year, which was a breaking point for me, where I literally just had a complete mental breakdown. I was like crying, screaming hysterically. I don't think my parents knew what was going on. And I literally like got in my car and I really thought about like, I need to crash this car. Like I was in full on, panic mode. And still nobody really like told me, maybe you need some help, or like, maybe you have like something going on. Like, no, because I was a very successful child. I was a good student. I was like a good child. I was a good daughter. Like I played by the rules. So I don't think anybody really thought anything of it. And I don't think anybody really knew what was going on in my own mind, and I don't think I really knew. So, and then college, I remember like, I vowed to not be so stressed out. I remember going into college, like, I'm not going to just do schoolwork and make myself so busy. And so I did a better job of that, and I had a lot of fun. But then in my junior year of college, I had an identity crisis. And I had always wanted to be a writer and an author. And that's like all I had wanted to do my whole life. I love writing, which is why I started my blog a year ago. And it's been so much fun to get back in touch with that. But writing was always my number one thing. And so I was like, I'm going to be an author. And then in my junior year of college, I was in some creative writing classes. And again, now years later, I figured out what this was. I was kind of receiving some criticism in my classes, constructive, from any kind of creative writing workshop you're in. I was putting out my work, and you literally go around in the class and you give constructive feedback. And I could not handle it. Like, I thought every piece of feedback meant my work was terrible. I thought I was so bad at writing. I was reading all my peers' pieces of writing, and I was just like, I suck. I got so sucked into comparison mode and like this criticism means I'm bad that I literally just was like, okay, I'm not going to be a writer. Like literally like that.
So you stopped yourself. Like it was too much, like that level of like sharing your work and that vulnerability. It was a lot to handle, it sounds like. And you just stopped yourself from doing it any longer.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've been asked like, well, you know, were your parents supportive of this? And, you know, because a lot of times that inner critic voice comes from your parents and saying, you know, this isn't a sensible career. Literally, no, they were so supportive of this. And
I remember that you and I have talked about this before because spoiler alert, Melina and I are friends, but we have talked about this before, this inner critic and maybe where it came from. And you and I both share this in common, that both of our parents have always just been so supportive and welcoming of whatever path that we wanted to walk down. But we have both respectively in our own ways cut ourselves off at some point in our lives from doing the thing that we love the most or doing what we would, you know, are passionate about or fulfillment, and instead went towards a career or a life that maybe was more accepted or more safe or felt reasonable. So you and I share that.
We do. And I love that we bonded over that first because I feel like that's so many people, right? I mean, so many people that happens to, whether it's your parents or whether it's society or whether it's your own voice or a combination of all three. Like, but I just find that funny that even if you have a very supportive community, very supportive parents, family, that voice still exists. Like literally it's evolutionarily planted in there to stop us for our survival. But now it's just stopping us, and it doesn't care if we're fulfilled, right? It doesn't care if we are going after our dreams. It just wants to keep us safe. So for now, we have to learn. Like, I think that's one of the greatest journeys of our lives is to really learn how to kind of quiet that voice of I'm not good enough or I can't do this, because you are always going to have that, no matter if you had a wonderful upbringing or a not so wonderful upbringing. And people have that voice at very different levels, obviously. And that's like the most sad thing to me ever is if I had kept going and I had kept letting that voice rule my life. And ultimately I had to choose to live a different life because having that voice of I'm not enough and let's just go do this sensible career path, which for me ended up being education, as a career path, because I was very passionate about it, and I still am. What I love about education is that you can really facilitate such a transformation in people, whether, you know, that's your students. I was a high school teacher for a while, and then I worked in higher education at colleges and really just seeing the transformation that students go through, because my other huge passion is personal growth. So what I'm doing now with coaching makes total sense. I just kind of had to figure out how to get there.
Yeah. What was this journey like, pushing past that voice, that inner critic, of that voice that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not creative enough, you're not enough to do what it is that you want to do? Yeah.
It has been such a journey, and it's crazy to be kind of on the other side of that now. But yeah, it was definitely challenging, and I had to start becoming more self-aware. So I think my first kind of indicator that I wasn't in the right kind of career path was just how bad my anxiety got again. So I mentioned that, you know, in high school, I had that panic attack, and I was definitely struggling with a lot of internal anxiety and perfectionism in high school. And then in college, I was able to have like a really great time and kind of let some of that go. But then after I graduated college, and again, that voice had already kind of really started coming out loudly of like, go do this education career because that's safe and it's a 9-to-5. And like, that's another thing I want to bring up is that the inner critic can sound very logical. I think for a lot of us, it's like, oh yeah, that's logical, because what was happening was with the writing, it was like, this is too vulnerable. This is way too scary. You know, we need to stop doing this. Cause the writing, putting out your writing and putting out anything like this podcast, anything, it's so close to your heart. Like it's it comes from a deep core of you. And that can be very difficult when held up to criticism, and something that we all as creators have to work on. And so you do have to check in with yourself with that inner critic voice of, is this really like logical, or is it my inner critic just kind of like being sneaky, you know?
Yeah, and holding you back by showing you what makes most sense, quote unquote, right? And by showing you like what you expected for yourself. I found that it's the stuff that makes you the most uncomfortable. It's where it puts you in a position to be rejected. It's what puts you in a position to be more vulnerable. That's often, I would say probably like 9.5 out of 10 times. Like that's actually the path that you're supposed to walk down, because it pushes you to shed those layers of who you thought you were and to really embrace and accept and walk into not only the new, but also like who you're supposed to be. You won't get the opportunity to even know that if you don't put yourself in those more, vulnerable positions.
That's a really good point. You're kind of like, you're totally dampening yourself so that you don't even know who you really are. That's a great point. And that's exactly what happened to me. But then I think what can happen is if you're dampening yourself so much and you're losing those parts of yourself, like you mentioned earlier, those creative parts of ourselves. And it's often the creativity, right?
I think it's the creativity that suffers more than the logic, right? Because like you've shared, you follow the logic as opposed to the creativity. And not to say that they can't go hand in hand.
They can, for sure.
Working 9 to 5 in education versus pursuing your dreams of being a writer and an author and a poet and a coach. I mean, the latter is not necessarily like what society says is the most logical.
Yeah. And I also think you bring up a good point that you can definitely, I like, do both. Like you do not, this has taken me a long time and like lots of thought and lots of, like decisions and planning to finally be able to leave my full-time job. And that's not for everybody. Like it totally depends. A lot of people love just having a hobby. Like, I think that's another thing is you don't necessarily need to monetize your passion or you don't need to monetize your creativity, because for a lot of people that puts a lot of pressure, that puts a lot of, stress. And you can totally work a 9 to 5 and do something on the side that fulfills you in that way. Like it really depends.
Yeah, I think it's about being creative for the sake of being creative and the way that it makes you feel and the way it expands you and how it brings you joy. I think, we get so stuck, I think, especially today in society and our generation, maybe especially of like this pressure of if there's something you really love to do, then that should 100% be the way you support yourself and how you bring in money. But the truth is like you can be multifaceted and love so many things and have creative passions and endeavors that you do in addition to the thing that makes you money. Because I think sometimes too, when we flip it and we feel like we have to have the thing that we like, the creative thing that we love, when we feel like that has to make us money, then we put on this extra pressure and then there's more external pressure and validation. And then you're hustling even more for that, for whatever that end goal is. So I think it's more about, again, like being creative for the sake of being creative because you love it, because it helps you feel good and grounded and aligned, as opposed to hustling for what maybe society says it's supposed to bring you. It's a very interesting double-edged sword, I think, on like every level.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. And I think it also really depends on every person. But of course, like, I'm definitely not saying like throw logic completely aside. I like that you said that you can have both and you should have both. Like you definitely don't need to just run off and like quit your job tomorrow. But I think when you start small, I think people also think of like, oh, following my dreams or like living more in alignment. That sounds like a huge thing. And actually the smallest things are the hugest things in my like experience and opinion. So for me, like that small step back towards my creativity was starting a blog and just, I had no idea. Like, it's funny. When I started my blog, I did not even know about the coaching field. Like I never like, I didn't even know what that was. I really hadn't really heard of it. But I started my blog and then I was writing again and that just felt so great. And I was obviously doing all of this completely on the side of my 9 to 5. And then was just loving the process of that. I got connected to awesome people. I also was like putting myself out there more, just like reaching out to random people like you. I reached out to.
Yeah, that's how we connected.
I love your podcast. Yeah. And then we were like, we're both in LA. Let's meet up. That was so cool. Like,
I love that.
That was something I never would have done before. It was like, but once I started like moving in one step towards alignment, and that small kind of step of like, you know what, I'm just going to start a blog. I know everybody's doing it. I know there's a million blogs. I know I'm probably not saying anything new, but only I am saying it in this way. And also I was doing it for me. Like I really wasn't doing it to blow up and go viral. And I think that's another thing that you mentioned too, is like create for the sake of creating, and you're going to be so much happier than if you're creating for others.
Yeah. Take us to this moment where you launched the blog.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
we've talked about it, but I'd love for you to share what this was like, because I don't want to spoil it. You share it. But take us to that moment. Take us to that moment where you were like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to launch this. Here we go.
Yes. It was so scary and exciting, but it was just this idea that I had. And it came a couple days actually after this other idea that I had, which was, I don't have to stay in education anymore.
Newsflash, I don't have to stay in the thing I thought I needed to do. I can change.
It was, oh my God. It was like, I don't, you know, like what?
Those moments are insane, especially when you're someone who has, like you shared, you know, had a path and had a structure and really thrived in that structure. Yeah. And then to have this realization, like, wait, I can change my mind. I can do something else. Like it's like opens up a lot of doors, but I anticipate there was a lot of fear and worry and anxiety with that too.
Absolutely. But I think you can kind of tell if you have a thought and then you just feel relieved, you know, like I just had that thought and I was so unbelievably relieved and so unbelievably excited. And it just felt really right. And it was super scary. And I had gotten my master's degree in higher education. I had literally just graduated 4 months before this.
Wow.
And I was like 4 months before I had spent 2 years in school, which I really did enjoy. I had spent 2 years in school. I then was in my first full-time job in this field, and I was definitely like enjoying it. And I was still thinking like this is going to be my career, but there were some kind of doubts I was having and some issues with the field that I was already kind of having. But then when I had this thought, it was like a wave of relief and excitement. And I honestly felt like my whole life kind of opened up. And for the first time, it was like having a plan. Not having a plan is an exciting thing rather than a terrifying thing. You know,
your perspective changed and things opened up. I love what you said, that things really opened up for you in a way that was different, that felt exciting, that you didn't feel closed off anymore.
No, I felt a complete opposite. I felt very expansive. And I think I'd been trying to stuff myself into this. I have to work in education because that's like, you know, a field where I'm helping people and I can do the most good. And also that's where I've had every other single job. So like, how am I even going to transition into a new field at this point? Like all of my jobs have been in education. You know what I mean? I think we just really, especially I talked to a lot of people. I was just talking to a woman yesterday about, she's like, well, but you know, I went to school for this and this is what I thought I wanted to do. And it's tough. It's really tough admitting you went to school for this, you invested money in this, you've invested a lot of time in this, and you don't really know if that's what you want to do anymore.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
That's really scary. And I've shared this before on the show, and I know I've shared this with you too, but I really think like even if you went to school for one specific thing and you ultimately change your mind, it doesn't mean that those experiences and the knowledge that you gained, you know, along the way doesn't count for anything. They're all tools in your toolbox. And I say this all the time, both in real life and on the show, like it's tools in your toolbox that you take with you. So the experiences, the knowledge, the understanding, the empathy, the way of thinking, writing, speaking, communicating, I mean, whatever it might be, you carry it with you. And so it's like this foundation. It's almost like the experiences we have, whatever we initially choose, if you are someone who then makes a switch and a transition, and ultimately I think everyone makes some sort of transition in their life, right?
Yep.
You know, it all builds like the foundation for which you create the next thing, the next career path, the next life, the next layer, you know, of who you are. So it's none of it is wasted.
I totally agree. And like you said, so many people go through different transitions. It's all about your perspective, right? It's all about your thoughts on it. You can either think about it like, oh, I wasted my time, I wasted this. No, everything was supposed to happen exactly the way it happened. And like you said, there's always something that you can take with you. And for me, at first I was like, okay, I'm in higher education. How is this related to coaching at all? And then when I really looked back, like I mentioned earlier, what I realized is, again, the more I dug into, okay, this isn't working. This was my second like kind of career field and career change. I was in K through 12. Then I moved into higher education again, which was like, okay, this is logical. It's still like in the educational realm. Maybe I'll like this better. I still wasn't really connecting enough to who I was and making decisions out of that place enough. Because I think if we don't have a sense of who we are, and of course we're always learning that. I don't, I don't say that I know exactly who I am and I'm like done. We're always learning that. But I think the more we can work either on our own or with a coach or with a therapist on who are we really and what are our values. And the more we can make decisions, big life decisions like career, relationships, like where we're going to live, like all of that that's happening in our 20s, especially, we're making all these decisions. The more we can make those decisions rooted in a really strong sense of who are we really, not who we supposed to be or who we think we're supposed to be or who we think we are, but who are we really when we drill down to it, I think the better results that you're going to have. And so when I look back on it, all my experiences also led me to realize I really want to work for myself. So working in an office is very difficult for me, especially with my anxiety. Not having a flexible work option or sometimes like work from home was difficult in my last job. But when I look at like why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I love doing the most, it's helping people transform. That's what I was doing when I was teaching. I got to see the students transform over the whole year. And then when I was in higher ed, I was actually working in our like leadership office. So we were doing leadership trainings with students, and that was really rewarding. I got to actually teach there as well. So I taught a leadership class, and seeing students transform and become better leaders, that was amazing. And now I'm helping women also transform. So it's definitely all related. Even though it seems very unrelated, you can always find a connection to it, I think, as well.
All right, guys, taking a brief break from this week's new episode to talk to you about something I'm really excited about and I'm really loving, which is our Seek the Joy Guide to Podcasting and our Seek the Joy Guide to Pitching Guests. I have been so overwhelmed and blown away by not only the response to both guides, but what you guys have already shared with me about the impact that they're having on your podcasting journey. And my whole mission and focus with both guides is to really help you get your message off the ground and into the ears of the people that really need to hear it the most. And so I am just so excited to finally launch and share both of these guides and to see them in action as you begin to develop and grow and launch a podcast of your dreams. So head on over to seekthejoypodcast.com/seekthejoyguides to check them out, or hit that link in the show notes. It'll take you right there. And I'm excited to see where you go with this podcasting journey. All right, guys, without further ado, let's head back to this week's new episode. Yeah, there's always a thread, like a common thread that kind of weaves through, and you look back and you go, oh, that's why. Oh, this makes sense. Okay, I can use this. You've touched on a little bit about self-awareness and just the role that it's played for you throughout this journey. And part of that self-awareness was understanding, the role your anxiety has played and your mental health. And I'd love for you to share, what tools or practices you've relied on, throughout your journey, but also in these life's transitions that have helped you, stay rooted and stay grounded and able to come back and keep pushing forward, despite transitions and hardships and what it's all meant for you.
I've used a lot of tools, and you cannot do this alone. I will say, yes, you need to develop self-awareness. There's a lot of ways you can do that on your own, like some very basic ways. I would say journaling, huge. I love journaling and writing again. I love, so it's very like cathartic for me. I get down to a lot of like what the root of the issues are. So journaling has really helped me get in touch with who I am. But then what can really, really help you is surrounding yourself with other self-aware people. We'll start there.
That is such a good point. Yes.
Yeah, because, and like in your relationship, if you're in a relationship or even your relationship with your friends, like I'm very lucky that you and all of my other friends are very mature and self-aware people. So when we have conflict, we can really work through that. And my friends have pointed out to me like, hey, like lovingly, you need those people that can point out to you lovingly some blind spots you may not have, because we can do all the self-development work, self-awareness work we want. You have to have other people helping you. You can also have a therapist. I went to therapy when all this was going on, and that was so helpful to kind of look back at what had been going on in my childhood that I hadn't really addressed. And then having my husband, Steve, he's incredible. So he and I work a lot of things out together. He's also extremely self-aware. And so he has brought to my attention a lot of things I never knew about myself as well. And then now I'm working with a coach, and that has been so incredible. I mean, I know I am a coach, but I seriously love coaching, and it has done so much for me. My coach also really, we sit every week we have our session, and she really helps me figure out, especially in my business, but like in my life, what is in alignment with me. It is so helpful in developing your own awareness of what's in alignment.
I love what you shared just about the importance of having people around you that are also mindful and self-aware and who are also sort of walking this walk, I think is probably the best way to put it. I found for me, and tell me if this resonates for you too, but I have found that it wasn't until I was really willing and able to be honest with myself and my roadblocks and my limitations, and then had the courage, to share those and to voice those, that I really started to have people in my life who I could actually have those kinds of conversations with. I was reflecting on this the other day. So much of my life, and I'm only 28, but I feel like mostly in high school and even throughout middle school or even parts of college, a lot of my friendships were superficial, meaning we talked about superficial surface level stuff, the weather, politics, gossip, whatever it might be. But then there weren't a lot of conversations that went below the surface, that were deeper, that were open and honest about mental health and anxiety and depression. We didn't have conversations about, our hopes and our goals and our dreams. And so I think for me, it really wasn't until I was able to have those conversations with myself and really be honest and brave, I think, because it is a level of vulnerability that for most of my life I didn't explore. So it wasn't until I was able to do that with myself that then I started to have people in my life who I could do that with too. So if there's anyone that's listening that's like, I don't have that, it'll come. It just takes, it takes some time.
Yeah, it does. And it's really uncomfortable. Like it's not fun at all.
No.
It's uncomfortable work, and you have to it's so worth it. I know everybody always says that, but when you kind of are willing to sit with the uncomfortable feelings of really, getting real with yourself and who you are, and taking in, feedback from others about who you are and kind of how you can improve. It's not always easy, but it's definitely worth it, because that's the only way to live a really fulfilled life, I think.
I agree. And you and I have alluded to this throughout this conversation, that you are now a coach. You're an alignment coach. But you and I are talking, like a month since you quit your full-time job, and you're now on your own. So can we talk a little bit about this transition and what it's been like? Because I think the timing of our conversation is interesting. Just so soon after you've made this choice and this decision to leave your full-time job and to work for yourself and to pursue this career in coaching. So what has it been like to quit your full-time job, to now have your own schedule, to be your own boss, and to really put yourself out there again in this new and different way than, different than you've ever done before? Yeah,
very different than I've ever done before. Very vulnerable, of course. Like, I was just sitting this morning and okay, this is uncomfortable. It's okay. I'm going to be fine. I am being very vulnerable right now and putting myself out more than I ever have. But I think, again, I have a coach right now, and I think that is honestly the number one thing that is helping me with this transition. I think I never used to ask for help. It just has taken me a while to realize in any big transition, you need help. You really need help if you can. I know not everybody is in that position, but I truly believe that if when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Totally.
And there's also so many free resources out there, which I love. But for me, I was I know I'm going to need a coach, and I'm going to need help through this transition, because it's huge. Leaving a full-time job, stepping off the conventional path, working for myself. And it definitely requires putting myself out there a lot more than I ever have, which I think has also gotten easier because I'm more used to that now. I've had an entire year of
you
practicing.
You had some practice. Yeah.
And the more you practice something, the easier it gets. I also hear a lot of people well, I don't have the confidence yet. I'm going to wait till I have XYZ. No. The only way to get confidence is to do it. You're not going to have confidence the first few times you do it.
You have to show yourself you can do it, and the only way to do it is to actually do it.
Which is such a catch-22, right?
I know.
Because so many people are
my biggest complaint about life is that you have to actually do the thing to know that you can do it.
It's so hard. It's so hard. But then it's always okay, I can do this, and I didn't die, and I'm okay, and I'll make it through. And so I have had a decent amount of practice with that so far. But yes, I think my coach has been so incredibly helpful in helping navigate me through this transition, because it's huge. There have been a lot of fears that have been coming up. I do have, if anybody is interested, it's a free resource that can help you, a meditation on calming your inner critic, which is on my website. If you go to melinacharis.com, it's literally like right there. You can enter your email and download it. It's 15-minute meditation. I literally recorded it like the day after I had such a bad week. It was actually my first week after I quit. I was so scared. I was in so much fear. I was just so panicked. Like, I was like, what did I just do? This is so scary. And my inner critic was so loud. It was just so loud. And that whole week I was kind of like just in a panic. And then finally I journaled. I was like, I'm just going to journal. And I literally journaled out every thought that the inner critic was telling me. And there were like 30 negative thoughts.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
So many. I was like, I'm going to keep going until I get them all out. It was like so many negative thoughts that I was having. But then at the end of that journaling experience, what tends to happen to me when I journal, which is amazing, is that I journal everything out and then I can kind of release it and let it go. And then I tap into what I like to call my inner knowing. And once I let go of the inner critic, I tap into this deeper part of myself that we all have that is completely loving, completely knowing, completely at peace. And that voice then kind of speaks to me, like through the journaling, which is amazing. And that's been really helpful. And what that voice then told me was, this is not you. This is just your inner critic. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. And then when I had that realization that like, these thoughts are not true, they're not me, they're just coming up because I'm putting myself out there. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. And anytime you're doing that, that voice will come up. And that's another reason I really strongly suggest when you are going after your dreams, if you're feeling that voice coming up a lot, which is very normal, that's why working with somebody is so helpful, whether that's a coach or a therapist or whatever helps you, like a spiritual teacher, whoever you're going to work with, so helpful because that coach can remind you, this is not you.
Yeah,
like,
that's a really
I don't feel like
point.
we're ever beyond needing help. We really, especially when we're going after our dreams and playing so much bigger, like you said, than anything I've done before and really stepping off that path, I knew I needed some help. So
what have you loved the most so far, you know, in the last month or so, I guess, of now being on your own and being your own boss and working for yourself and finally, you know, in many ways living in this alignment? What have you loved the most so far?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Everything. So after I kind of moved past that, in that first week, it has just been like so absolutely incredible. And again, that's not to say that like some challenges or like negative thoughts don't come up, because they do, of course, like anyone's going to have those. And especially when you are like going after your dreams, but it has been so incredible. Like I can't even describe. And that's another reason I'm so like excited to work with more and more clients, because to go from where I was and really ignoring who I was and just living not the right life, and I wasn't in the right career. I was in a job that I was really, really unhappy in. And I know the toll that takes on you. You know, it takes away from your regular life when you're just not happy. It's so difficult. And my anxiety really spikes. So it's just been, I feel like I'm in such flow. Like I feel I get to schedule my days however I want. Like I get to meet up with friends. I feel like that feeling we were talking about being expansive, I feel expansive. Like I feel like I used to kind of rush from thing to thing, 40 hours a week. And especially, when you have a side hustle, which I had, there's not a lot of time for like your wellness or seeing friends, or there's not a lot of time for that. And that's very, very difficult for me. Do you know human design at all? I don't think we've talked about
I do,
this.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm your projector. So it also depends on
Me too, sister. Me too.
Oh, yes. So
but I am not living in alignment with my
you're
design.
Not living in
and I probably never will. And I've just embraced it.
Yeah. And that's okay, because you can't always, that's another really good point. Like you can't always live exactly in a
I work 60 hours a week. I never stop working. I'm always working on the weekends. If anyone doesn't know, projectors are supposed to work in spurts and they're supposed to rest a lot. And they're more like Jenna Zoe describes it as like the birds in the trees that are kind of like overlooking and helping to guide society. I'm in the trenches. Like I'm not. But I love that realization like also helped you kind of validate and solidify like,
yes,
oh, this is not for me.
Yeah. And that's something I work with clients with as well, as human design. I'm getting more and more into it because that has really helped me. I'm a projector. I'm not like supposed to work straight all this time, like 10 hours a day, it really leads you to burnout. I do think, of course, there have been many times in my life when I have been working 60 plus hours a week. And there, of course, like, you can't always, live your exact perfect life. That's not always feasible. We also have life stuff that comes up. We have grief. True. We have to take care of aging parents. Like, there are things. So that's why also, like, there are so many practices that you can do. I know you have a lot of practices as well. Not that you necessarily have to do every day, but that can help you, like, stay in an alignment when you have things that come up and you have, like, things where you're not able to just work whenever you want. Because that is a huge luxury. And I am so glad I'm able to do that. But yeah, the human design and embracing my nature as a projector has really helped me kind of also not pack too much in, because that's the thing. Like, also when you are doing something you love, you just want to keep doing it forever. I mean,
God, don't I know? The nights where I don't sleep and I'm like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah. Well, it's still, I think, better than like working 60 hours a week at a job you hate. Totally. Like, it's definitely so much better than that. And I've been there too, where like, I just don't want to stop. But I think that's been really key in like the long term setting up my business and setting up my life is like, but it's tough also, like, unlearning a lot of these things that we're taught about productivity, about pushing yourself. And I think it just depends on you and your energy. And that's why human design is great. Yeah, I've been in complete bliss.
Love it. Oh, I love it.
It's so amazing to live in alignment. I just like stop every day and I'm so grateful. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when I'm vulnerable, like, I'm just so grateful. And I feel so lucky to have really figured out and had the tools to figure out who I am. And now, like, for the first time ever, be living such an aligned life. It is incredible. I've been loving it so much.
I love what you just shared. And I think that's a really important message too of, it takes some time, but once you figure it out and you unpack these layers and you recognize what works for you. And I think that's what's really important is that phase or that step of recognizing what works for you. And you really used, it's so fascinating. You've used this component of self-awareness and creativity and mindfulness and really stepping forward in all three of those things as a real like catalyst for your growth and your well-being and your healing. Is there a mantra or an affirmation or something that you kind of hold on to, whether it embodies those three things or not, that's really helped you, so far on this journey and as you continue to move forward?
Yes. I think my mantra that I say every single day and that I really love is I am enough and I am worthy. Those two things, I think when all of our insecurities, our fears, it all comes down generally to those two. You're not worthy, you're not enough. So for me, it's really staying rooted in I am absolutely enough as I am with what I have. And I am worthy. I'm worthy because it is funny how even when you are living an aligned life, then it comes up of like, well, do I deserve to be this happy? It's crazy what our mind does. It's like, do I really deserve this? Am I worthy of this? And so, standing really rooted in, I am worthy of living my dreams. I am worthy of living an aligned and empowered life because everybody is. But I think we really forget that. And we get scared and we hold ourselves back and we don't believe in that enough. So yes, I am enough. I am worthy or mantras I come back to all the time.
Speaking of dreams, I love asking this question because our dreams can be anything. And I think recognizing our worth, knowing our worth, recognizing and owning and stepping forward in that worth and knowing we're worthy of our dreams, we're worthy of who we are, we're worthy of who we want to be. It's really huge. And it plays a big role, I think, in our willingness to continue to grow and our willingness to step forward in that growth and really embrace it. I would love to know, what is your biggest dream?
My biggest dream is to write a book. That's always something since I was a child, have wanted to do. So I am going to do it.
You're going to do it. For sure.
Yep. I'm definitely going to. And it's going to look different, which is funny because I think when you're a kid, I love kind of bringing people back to what did they love to do as a child. I think that tells a lot.
Huge.
Yeah, that's huge in what your dreams are. And it may not look exactly like you thought, obviously, because when you're a child, you have like very limited like views of kind of what things can be. So when I was a child, I was always like, I'm going to write a novel and it's going to be a best-selling novel. And I don't think I want to write a novel, although never say never.
Right. You never know.
I do want to write a book for sure. And I would love to write a book that helps people. And I would absolutely love to be on the bestseller list. I have no shame in saying that. And I also, one of my big dreams is to really just use my voice to help others, like in their transformation. So how that's kind of manifesting now is like, I would love to become a yoga teacher, which I'm also going to be on my way to. I'm starting a teacher training in October, so this month.
Oh my God.
Like a meditation teacher, yoga teacher. I'd love to lead retreats, and I'd love to speak. Like I would love to speak on stages about this stuff, and really just kind of use my journey and my experience in leading others. But yeah, those are my big dreams, is to kind of do this on a bigger scale.
There's something really powerful about declaring what you want and doing so unafraid and unashamed.
Yep.
We worry so much. I do this all the time. I worry if my dreams are too big. I worry if someone's going to judge me for telling them what my dream is. Like, who the hell does she think she is? You know, again, it's like the inner critic that manifests itself as like the outer critic, which is like also a real thing. So, you know, it's interesting. So I always love asking that question, because there's really a lot of power in declaring your dreams and who you are and who you want to be, and sharing it. And I have no doubt that all of this is going to happen. And I'm excited to not only witness it, but be part of it in, you know, whatever small way I can. And thank you for coming on the podcast and for sharing. I mean, I'm so glad we did this now in the middle of this really amazing transition from kind of this really like expectation of what society told you were supposed to be, to being like who Melina really knows she is and who she wants to be. So I'm so grateful that we did this. Where can everyone find you, learn more, learn about your coaching program? I know you released it in September. So tell us where we can find everything and get connected.
Yeah, so you can find everything on my website, which is melinacharis.com. And then same thing, I'm most active. I love Instagram. I respond to every message. I'm very active on there. So come find me on Instagram. My handle is @melinacharis. And then if you want to learn about my coaching programs, that's at melinacharis.com/coaching.
Perfect. I will include everything in the show notes. It'll be super easy for everyone to find you and to get started with your new program. And
Yay!
I'm so happy that you slid into my DMs.
I really did.
Back in what was like 2018, and that we got together and that we're friends and that we had the opportunity to have this conversation, and just the parallels in our experiences and just who we are in the journey that we're on, and our dreams and our goals and our mission. And I'm just so grateful. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I'm so glad to finally be on here. You're such an inspiration to me too.